morning, it's March 31st, and this is To My Liberal Friends. I think we all know that immigration was a hot topic during the last election. During the 4 previous years, estimates were all over the place, but there was a consensus that probably over 6 million people illegally crossed the border during the Biden administration, with some placing that number just north of 8 million. And those numbers got the attention of the voting public, and Donald Trump hammered away on it, while the Harris campaign had no way or able to defend or deny it. In the post-election period, polling shows a strong majority of Americans are in favor of deportations. The Pew Research Center, a fairly reliable source, reported that depending on how the question was asked, the numbers fluctuated. If you had committed a violent crime, then 97% believe you should be deported. If you've committed a non-violent crime, that number comes down at about 54%. The most interesting number goes to what occurred during the Biden administration. If you entered the country illegally, close to half of the respondents feel you should be deported. Now, realizing that he had political winds at his back, Donald Trump has tried to live up to his campaign promise. He signed several executive orders related to the immigration issue. He has sent a signal to would-be illegal immigrants because apprehensions at the southern border have dropped historically low levels. They're simply not coming anymore. Democrats and their allies in the legal profession have gone to the courts to prevent the Trump administration from carrying out these deportations. They've all argued that all of the immigrants are allowed due process, full well knowing that those hearing those cases could take years. But where were they when President Obama and Biden were deporting people? Under Obama, he set out 3 points of criteria for deportations. The first priority consisted of illegal immigrants who posed a threat to national security or public safety, including those engaged in or suspected of terrorism or espionage, those convicted of a crime or possessing outstanding criminal warrants, or those who participate in organized criminal gang activity. These were criteria under Obama. The second priority under Obama consisted of undocumented immigrants who recently unlawfully entered the United States. Wow, that was under Obama. The third priority consisted of undocumented immigrants who obstructed immigration controls, including those who re-entered the U.S. unlawfully after removal, didn't heed a final order of removal, or engaged in visa or identification fraud. Does that sound familiar to what's occurring today? Under President Obama, about 4 million people were deported, and yet nobody was going to court to stop those deportations, perhaps because it was a Democrat president. Similar actions were being taken under the Biden administration. While they were opening up the borders to make it easier to illegally enter the U.S., they eventually had to face the facts. President Biden had promised to pause deportation, but with the surge in border, they had to continue deporting people. So now here we are in 2025, and suddenly Democratic lawyers are seeking to stop deportations. And they've ignored all those things while Democrats sat in the Oval Office. Trump is being aggressive in deporting people, with a special emphasis on those that are criminals. Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport hundreds of Venezuelan members of the Tren de Aragua gang. This has brought the administration into court in a tangled legal fight. District Court Judge James Boasberg ordered the administration to suspend any flights deporting these gang members. He suggests they should turn the flights around, but gave up on that order because the planes had already left U.S. airspace. He was not happy and has continued to try and stop any future flights to El Salvador, but he has refrained from trying to demand the gang members be returned to the U.S. Can you imagine the outcry if he said, bring all those criminals back and put them in your neighborhood? Both polling and familiarity with ordinary American opinions suggest the public's pretty okay with the proposition that members of a foreign criminal organization deserve an immediate one-way ticket to some other country. Comments by legal analysts that I respect find the administration's reading of the Alien Enemies Act well within the realm of plausibility. And that law reads, and I'm going to quote, whenever there is declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, all native citizens, denizens, or subjects of the hostile nation or government who shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. End quote. Now, there's no declared war or even an undeclared one, but the law says that, quote, an invasion or predatory incursion is sufficient. I suspect a healthy majority of Americans feel such a thing has happened, aware that many around the world wish this country ill and could be counted on to take advantage of a border that remained more or less open for 4 years. Those Americans who happen to know that the Tren de Aragua is a Venezuelan crime organization with bases of operations in several U.S. states, including Colorado, New York, Texas, and Wisconsin. They won't require a great deal of convincing on this point. Nobody who has lived in or near one of these rundown apartment complexes controlled by these foreign gangs is likely to query the meanings of war and incursion. Now, I hear a lot about separation of powers from the anti-Trump crowd, but they were all silent when Obama and Biden were deporting immigrants. Suddenly, they're all on the side of these judges. Well, judges aren't meant to consider public opinion when they render their rulings, but they might remember that the public sometimes has more sense than all the intellectuals. In the present case, if the Trump administration is denied the authority to deport violent aliens, the public will conclude, with some experience on its side, that such criminals will remain here for good. And we can safely assume there are thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of such aliens in the country. Affording them all due process, which in practice means giving each a squad of attorneys employed by activist nonprofits, will grind the whole effort to a halt. In which case, as Mr. Trump likes to say in his hyperbolic way, we don't have a country anymore. And those calling for this process for criminals would be screaming to the high heavens if they were moved into their neighborhoods. It sort of reminds me how people in the northern states did not think much about illegal immigration until they start sending them to their cities and states. Now they understand it, and now they want them deported. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.